We all know how good a hug can feel or just a reassuring pat on the back. But
Hmm.
have you ever thought about how important touch can be,
Yeah.
especially for men?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Today, we're diving into this really interesting Reddit thread
Okay.
where guys were talking about, like, what kind of physical touch they want.
Interesting.
And some of these responses are pretty surprising.
Really? Like what?
It wasn't even about romantic touch, really. It was just like basic, everyday, non-sexual touch that a lot of guys seem to be missing out on.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like reading through these comments,
Hmm.
you start to see how many men are just like walking around feeling touch deprived.
Mm.
One guy even said, "You guys are getting touched."
Wow.
Makes you wonder what's going on, right?
Yeah, like is there something that we're doing as a society that makes men feel like they can't ask for touch or initiate it? Unless it's like a really specific situation?
It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. We're always hearing about what it means to be a real man, and that usually means being stoic and not showing your
Mm.
emotions.
Right, like strength and resilience are good qualities to have, but it shouldn't mean that you have to sacrifice basic human needs like affection and connection.
You know, there was one comment that really got to me. This guy said the last time he was touched in a non-sexual way, besides shaking someone's hand or going to the dermatologist, was maybe 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
That's so long to go without just feeling the simple comfort of touch from another person.
That's really sad. And it just shows you what can happen when we ignore this basic human need. Touch deprivation isn't just about the physical feeling, it affects you emotionally too.
Right.
You can start to feel isolated, lonely, even depressed.
Yeah, it's almost like we're telling men that they need to suppress this natural human instinct,
Hmm.
and that can affect their relationships and how they see themselves.
And it's not just societal expectations either, although those definitely play a big role. There's a biological side to this too.
Okay.
Touch releases oxytocin, sometimes called the cuddle hormone, which has been shown to reduce stress, promote bonding, and even boost your immune system.
So it's not just about feeling good. It's good for your health,
Exactly.
which is even more concerning that so many men aren't getting enough.
Right.
Okay, so we know that a lot of men are feeling touch deprived. But what kind of touch are they looking for?
Right.
Is it these big romantic gestures or elaborate displays of affection?
No, not really.
Not at all.
It's a lot simpler than that. Actually, a lot of the men in the thread said they just want basic, everyday touches, like hugs, holding hands, back scratches, even just a reassuring pat on the shoulder.
It's like they want the kind of touch we associate with being a kid, you
Yeah.
know? Those simple acts of care and comfort that make you feel safe and loved.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like there's this deep need for that kind of unconditional affection, even as adults.
And it's not just about feeling loved. It's about feeling seen, acknowledged, and accepted for who you are.
Mm.
One guy said that these simple touches make him feel less like a hideous monster.
Wow, that's powerful.
Hmm.
It shows you how touch can affect how we see ourselves and whether we feel like we belong.
It's a reminder that everyone deserves to feel that kind of connection and validation, no matter their gender or social status.
Absolutely. And some of the stories that people shared in the thread were really touching. Like the guy who got his first hug in 10 years from a complete stranger.
Wow.
He was at a coffee shop and helped this woman out when her debit card wasn't working, and she just spontaneously hugged him to say thank you. He
Aw.
said he felt amazing for days.
I can imagine such a simple act of kindness leading to such a powerful moment of connection. It really shows you how touch can bring people together and create those moments of real intimacy.
Yeah. And there was another comment from a teenager who might be neurodivergent, and he said that he felt incredible for days after a bank teller held his hand to get a good thumbprint.
Hmm.
Amazing how even a quick touch can have such a lasting impact, especially for people who might be more sensitive to sensory experiences.
Totally. And then there was that guy who talked about how much he loves it when his girlfriend plays with his hair when they're cuddling. He said it's super relaxing and intimate.
It's interesting how these little things can trigger such strong emotional responses. It makes me think that maybe we don't realize how important touch is in our everyday lives.
Yeah, I'm curious about something. What do you think about the fact that so many of these guys are finding comfort in touch from strangers or through simple gestures instead of from their loved ones? I mean,
That's a good point. It could be that there's a communication problem in those close relationships. Maybe men are afraid to tell their partners or family that they need more touch because they're worried about being judged or rejected.
or maybe their loved ones aren't picking up on the subtle signs that these men are giving off.
Mm.
It shows how important it is to be open with each other and to pay attention to each other's needs, both the ones they tell us about and the ones they don't.
You're right. And this is where those societal norms and expectations start to come into play.
So how do you think those expectations about what it means to be masculine are contributing to men not getting enough touch?
Well, our culture often tells men that being masculine means being stoic, independent, and keeping your emotions in check.
And that can make it hard for men to be vulnerable or to ask for the kind of touch that they think makes them seem weak or needy.
Exactly. It's like there's this unspoken rule that men have to be the strong, silent type, and that wanting affection is somehow not manly.
And that kind of thinking can be so harmful for men and for society as a whole.
Right. It's a perfect example of how what society expects of us can directly affect our physical and emotional well-being.
As we keep talking about this, I'm starting to realize how much we take touch for granted. It's such a basic part of being human, but we often forget how important it is, especially in non-romantic relationships.
I think you're right. We focus so much on the sexual or romantic side of touch that we forget about how important it is for building connections, comfort, and emotional well-being. And that's true for everyone, not just men.
Right.
Hmm.
So interesting, huh?
It is. It's crazy how we think about touch like it's only for romantic partners or family, but what about friends? Those platonic relationships that are so important in our lives, don't they deserve some kind of physical touch too?
It's a good question. We hug our friends hello and goodbye. But how often do we actually touch them in other ways, like patting them on the back when they do a good job, or holding their hand when they're going through something tough?
Right, those are the kinds of things that can show real care and support,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't do them enough. Maybe because we're worried about crossing a line or making things weird.
Maybe it's because of the messages we got when we were kids. You
Uh-huh.
know, boys are told to be tough and hide their emotions, while girls are allowed to be more physically affectionate.
Yeah, that could be part of it. Those early experiences shape how we understand touch and whether it's okay or not. So maybe we end up wanting more touch than we feel comfortable giving or receiving.
Right. It's like we're taught that touch is only for romantic or sexual relationships, and anything else is wrong somehow.
And that can make it harder to build meaningful connections and experience all the different ways that touch can be good for us.
There was this other interesting thing that came up in the thread about how the kind of touch men want often reflects a deeper emotional need. Like a guy who wants a hug might be looking for comfort and security, while someone who likes back scratches might be craving a feeling of being cared for.
That makes sense. Touch isn't just about the physical feeling, it's about communicating emotions and making people feel good. Think about it. A hug can make you feel accepted and like you belong. A pat on the back can show you that someone recognizes your hard work. And a gentle touch on the arm can be a way of showing empathy and support.
And we're not always good at expressing those needs with words, especially in a culture that tells men to be tough and keep their feelings to themselves.
So touch becomes this unspoken language, a way to share those feelings without having to say them out loud.
But what happens when people don't get the touch that they need? What are the effects of touch deprivation, especially for men who might already have trouble talking about their feelings?
Well, that's where things get interesting. Studies have shown that touch deprivation can actually affect your health. It can increase stress, anxiety, and depression, and even weaken your immune system.
So it's not just about feeling lonely or disconnected. It can actually make you sick.
Exactly. And for men who are told not to show vulnerability or seek emotional support, the effects of touch deprivation can be even worse.
It's like a vicious cycle.
Hmm.
Society tells men to be strong and stoic, so they don't ask for touch. Then they don't get the touch they need, which makes them feel worse and makes it even harder to break out of those expectations.
It's a complicated problem with deep roots in our society and culture. But the first step to solving it is recognizing that it exists.
As we're talking about this, I'm realizing that anyone can experience touch deprivation, not just men. We all need touch and connection, and when we don't get it, we all suffer.
Absolutely.
So how can we create a culture where touch is more common and more genuine, where men feel like they can ask for what they need and receive affection without feeling ashamed or embarrassed?
I think it starts with changing those old ideas about masculinity and encouraging people to be open about touch. We need to create environments where men feel comfortable expressing their needs and accepting affection without being judged or made fun of.
And it's not just about changing how men think about touch. It's about changing how society thinks about it too.
We need to stop thinking of touch as only sexual or romantic and start recognizing how important it is for connecting with people feeling comfortable and feeling good emotionally.
What are some things people can do to bring more healthy touch into their lives and the lives of the people around them?
It can be really simple things, like giving a friend a hug when they're having a hard time, patting a coworker on the back when they deserve it, or holding hands with your partner while you're walking down the street.
Those are great ideas. It's about being more aware of the power of touch and using it to create those little moments of connection that can make a big difference.
And don't forget to talk to each other about touch. Let people know what feels good to you and what doesn't, both when you're giving touch and when you're receiving it.
It's about creating a culture of consent and respect, where touch is always welcome but never forced.
Exactly. It's about seeing touch as a language of love, connection, and support. It's about understanding that a simple gesture can have a powerful impact, bringing people closer together and making them feel like they belong.
Maybe if we can embrace the power of touch, we can create a world where nobody has to ask, "You guys are getting touched," anymore.
That would be amazing. A world where touch isn't something you long for, but something that flows freely between people. That's a beautiful goal to work towards.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap up our deep dive into the power of touch, there's one more thing I wanted to bring up from this Reddit thread. The idea of playful touch.
Oh, yeah. Like when the original poster asked about how guys feel about butt slaps and foot tickling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That can be kind of tricky to talk about, because what one person thinks is playful and fun, another person might find uncomfortable or even invasive.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why it's so important to talk to each other and understand what the other person likes. What's interesting is that the guys in the Reddit thread had all kinds of different responses to that question. Some of them were totally into playful touch. They saw it as a way to be friendly and bond with other guys,
Right.
while others said they much prefer gentler, more affectionate kinds of touch.
So there's no right answer when it comes to playful touch.
Yeah.
Just like with any other kind of physical interaction.
Exactly. You have to communicate and figure out what works for each person. And this is true for all relationships, whether it's romantic or platonic, or even just with people you know, casually. Checking in with each other, saying what feels good, and
Yeah.
paying attention to what the other person is saying without words can help you navigate those tricky situations and make sure everyone feels comfortable and respected.
It's all about respect. As we wrap up this episode about the power of touch, I'm really struck by how much hope I see in this Reddit thread.
Yeah, there's a clear need for more touch, for more connection. But there's also this willingness to be open about it, to say what they need and to challenge those societal norms that might be holding men back.
I agree. It reminds me that change starts with being aware of the problem and talking about it openly. And it's a call to action for all of us to create a world where touch is seen as a good thing, a vital part of human connection, not something to be afraid of or something that's restricted.
You know, this whole conversation is making me realize how much I love talking about this topic.
Me too.
So to wrap things up for our listeners, I want to leave you with one final thought. Take some time to think about your own experiences with touch. What kind of touch do you crave? What makes you feel loved and cared for? And how can you express those feelings to the important people in your life through simple, genuine acts of physical affection? Maybe it's a hug, a hand on their shoulder, or a nice back rub. Whatever it is, let's all try to break down those walls and rediscover the power of touch. It's about understanding that touch can be a way to show love, connection, and support. It's about realizing that a simple gesture can mean so much. It can bring people closer together and make them feel like they belong.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the power of touch. We hope you learned something new and maybe even feel a little more appreciation for the importance of human connection. Until next time, keep exploring.